So sunshine, go away today. I don't feel much like dancing. Hey, some man's gone and tried to run my life. He don't know what he's asking. Yeah, yeah. When he tells me I better get in line, I can't hear a word he's saying. Hey, when I grow up, I'm gonna make it mine. For these ain't dues I've been paying. Sing it with us. So how much does it cost? I'll buy it. The time is all we lost. I'll try.
Welcome to Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians. Joining us today is a truly respected political analyst, Mr. Ford O'Connell. I'm Smokin Joe from Smokin Joe Nation YouTube. Thanks for watching the state and local show. Please like, share, follow, subscribe. This show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Everything you need and more. Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Ford, before I throw gas on the fire, let's mention Ron DeSantis has just by executive order signed SB102 called the Live Local Act. This is the largest housing bill since 1992 with a whopping $700 million budget. People are up in arms about this. I'm a little weary of it. I think that the biggest, I know some of the players and developers, and I don't know who this helps. Does it help people who need housing, or does it help developers? Have you followed this much?
You know, I have, and I think the jury's still out, but I definitely think that the developers are going to benefit from this bill. The question is who is it also going to help? I mean, are you actually going to have the type of affordable housing we talk about? I don't know. And also the other question, and again, the jury's out. What is it going to do to the property values overall in Southwest Florida? Only time's going to tell, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. I know that this is something that the legislature's been looking to push for more than 2 years. You know, the question I have, and some people have, is, you know, local control versus state control. And remember, Republicans always aren't going to be in charge in Tallahassee. So, you know, you could be opening up Pandora's box here.
Well, the thing that scares me is, you know, he said he's already proposed like $100 million to go to Homes for Heroes, which would be military first responder stuff, which I think is great. But they always throw some sugar on something to make it more palatable, and you know, when it's still a crap sandwich.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I'm all for the Hometown Heroes program. I think that's great. But, you know, again, and I hate to use a very political term, it's all in how the sausage is made. The idea behind this bill is fantastic. The question is it going to work out like it's being sold? I don't really know the answer, and we're not going to know for quite some time. The only question is, if the bad side turns up, are you going to find a way to fix this?
Well, unlike a lot of people, especially locally, I mean, a lot of people think you either got to be Trump or you got to be DeSantis, and I don't feel that way. I mean, I like both men equally, but I will tell you that Ron DeSantis come out in favor of House Bill 991, and that goes along with the SB 1220. Help me understand why DeSantis would even remotely support this legislation.
Well, I think that DeSantis believes that a lot of journalists are taking creative license in their coverage of him and state officials in Florida, and essentially they want to put them, you know, they want to be able to hold them accountable. Let's be honest. They've been throwing crap sandwiches at DeSantis for quite some time. My question isn't something we discussed when we discussed the Senate bill a couple of weeks ago, is this very good? When you start taking away rights, who becomes the beneficiary? And I found over time, when rights are eroded, the only thing that benefits is the government.
Well, I got a clip from a Florida news source here, and I just want to show it. And then we're going to talk about it, because I've been heated up, man. A lot of people have seen me. I've done a few live feeds where I was my blood pressure was through the roof. But let's see what we say after this.
Keeping an eye on politics this evening. We are now into the second week of the legislative session. Legislation proposing sweeping changes to Florida's libel and defamation law will be heard in committee Tuesday morning. House Bill 991 was filed back on February 21st. 10 Investigates' Jennifer Titus has been digging into this bill. If passed, it could have implications not just for media outlets, but also for anyone posting online.
That's what it looked like. I talked with a law professor today who told me this bill isn't pro-Democrat or pro-Republican. He says it's anti-speech. House Bill 991 would create a presumption that a statement by an anonymous source is presumptively false for purposes of a defamation. It also goes on to talk about publishing untrue allegations that the plaintiff has discriminated against another person or group because of their race, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity constitutes defamation per se. Some say House Bill 991 would make it easier for the little guy to go after media companies reporting false information. Santa Clara University School of Law professor Eric Goldman says it would also make it easier for the little guy to be sued as well.
This is purely a law that would benefit the wealthy and the powerful, and they are routinely bringing lawsuits or alleging lawsuits in order to suppress speech they don't like. We actually have a name for it. It's called SLAPPs. This law actually would undermine Florida's anti-SLAPP law, making it easier for the privileged to assert lawsuits, and it would go much further in advancing the ability of the wealthy and the privileged to bring lawsuits to control how people talk about them.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with what that law professor just said. I think that this it's sugared up to look like it's going to help the little guy, but it's not. It's going to be an effective tool for those with deep pockets.
Yeah, I think that is the case, and that's why. The other thing is, on its face, I do think that the bill, as I read it again, and we're going to go through this over time, I think it does suppress speech, and I am pretty big on the First Amendment. And I don't like to see rights eroded, because when rights are eroded, you never seem to get them back. So I do think that this does benefit the rich and powerful. As we currently understand it, it does not help the little guy at all, and it also suppresses speech.
Now, just for example, if somebody goes on a Facebook rant like I often do, then they could be open to a libel suit. It stomps all over freedom of speech, freedom of press, and pretty much, in my mind, destroys freedom of expression. I mean, if they set that bill into place, there's going to be some busy attorneys in Lee County. I can promise you that with me.
Oh, and also, if you take everything that was said in that news clip, I know they don't like talking about it, but this is exactly what the Biden administration is doing. They're trying to control what people can say, and they're also saying anything that they don't like should be suppressed. I mean, this is a very dangerous slope we're going down.
Well, I couldn't believe that he would even think that just changes. It don't make me, and I've said this 100 times, people will diminish the good things people have done because of one bad thing. I don't think this is good. I think this is horrible legislation, and I hope that he'll wake up. But I don't mean I diminish. Ron's been a great leader for the state of Florida. This is just stupidity, in my opinion.
Look, Ron has been the greatest governor in the history of Florida. I'll take it a step further, but you're absolutely right. That doesn't mean that everything he's done is perfect. And I do think that if you pass this bill, it's not going to be something great when looked back upon on his legacy.
Well, what that does is that props up people like Terry Miller, their organization and stuff. Like, they can bring lawsuits. Anybody that goes after one of their candidates, even though they're doing it, they got enough money to defeat these smaller people like me that just speak in their mind. So
it definitely insulates the power. And to your point, that's why I'm against it. I always believe that more speech is the answer. And as you and I know, Terry Miller's very good at defaming people. You know, and he's been practicing in the arts of defamation for quite some time. I mean, and I know from firsthand experience, how shall I say?
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. They definitely stuck it to you. Well, I'm gonna warn everybody watching. If that ain't enough to warm you up, last night's school board action meeting had me melt down, and I'll explain after this little clip of public comment. Please pay attention because there's a teacher. His name is Robert Daniels, I believe, and he, much like me, is the only person I've seen that's had the guts to stand up to this cacostocracy, this group of idiots that we got running our school board. And let me put that on for you.
Hello, my name is Robert Daniels. I'm back again. I'd like to start off by reminding you that last time I spoke, I invited all of you to contact me if you wanted to know more about how Lee Virtual School worked. A number of you expressed interest, but at this time, 3 weeks later, I've received 0 contact. I am the third person with the most experience in the virtual school. You probably want to talk to me if you want to know why things are done the way they are done. That being said, I'm here to talk about teacher pay once again. I'd like to take you back in time with me a little bit, 20 years ago when I first decided I wanted to be a teacher at the age of 15. I was living in a trailer park, son of a single mother with 2 brothers. We worked. I was 15, but we still worked. We helped pay the bills. And for our labors, all combined, we got to live in about 160 square feet in a neighborhood riddled with meth heads and drug dealers. Here I am 20 years later. I finished high school with more than a 4.0 GPA like our student representative here. Still had the bright idea I was going to be a teacher. I finished FGCU with a 3.75 GPA. I could have done anything other than be a teacher. I was so good, you guys used to pay me extra money to the tune of $3,000 a year for being part of the district best and brightest, which was money that was taken away from me when everyone else got the raise to the basic sum. So today, with all the sum of everything I am paid and all I have done and all the potential I threw aside to be a teacher, I today live in a house that's 860 square feet. And I have meth heads to the left of me next door, and I'm in a neighborhood overrun with drug dealers. But it's okay, they feel sorry for me. They tell me every day I'm a teacher, I should be paid more. But I'm not here just because of me. I'm here because this district has such a reputation for reprisals to those who speak out that my coworkers and my colleagues are afraid to speak to you. You've noticed probably very openly that I am nervous when I am up here. I know every time I come up here, I'm one step closer to being fired. But I plan to come up here until that day comes because somebody has to speak out. And it just so happens that I am best positioned out of so many of the teachers to where I can come up here and say these things, because even though I can only afford to live where I live, that is something I can achieve outside of this district just as securely. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen to my children, as I do not have any, should I be fired tomorrow over speaking out and getting out of line. So again, I would like to invite you one more time to examine the budget that has increased by 85% since you hired me, and ask yourselves if maybe the teacher base salary should not be more increased. Because while the bonuses are wonderful, there's always next year and more bills to pay. Thank you.
Smoking Joe as well as oh no, not him again. I filled out 2 comment cards. So I will finish my entire statement unless you want me to go back and change my shirt and get back into queue. The truth that in everything I've ever said, I take full responsibility for. My actions are mine and mine alone, and should never be used against any other human being. I always check the receipt of my content, and yes, I use them to prove with a humorous flair so that at least, unlike others, my message is heard. I asked the board if the Sunshine Law had been violated. Yes, I made a parody of it, which is what the board's attorney called it. Not until the legal department had spoke to the very last member on this board and they had exited was when the developer in question messaged me. Coincidentally, he divulged how could we ever have not heard of me before that moment. I've got that in a message. The very basis that you said my case didn't stand merit to proceed because my parody and public comment, his comment discredits your reasoning. So who's the habitual liar here? Next level of coincidence. I spoke out about the transportation department. Last meeting, may I add, to the ineffectiveness of Roger Lloyd's leadership. A parent of a child I had previously addressed to the board about an email through the school district only, no parody, nor mention of the child's identity publicly, which I've never done. Awakened by the sound of fear in the voice of the said parent in a call to my producer about the family being associated with me. Coincidence. As to the extent of my association with this family is only that I spoke to the district to remedy the issue of bullying previously. The problem was solved, so nothing more was needed from me. The parent called the transportation to inquire if the bus stops had been changed. She had to drive her child to school for the past 3 days. And there was nothing nefarious here. She just wanted to know if maybe after spring break the route had changed. The parent was asked their name and the child's name to have immediately be said, oh, you're associated with Mr. Phillips. She, knowing me only as Smoking Joe, she informed them we had no knowledge of who they were speaking of. This was the depot under Roger Lloyd's management. The same one I had copies of certified receipts that seemed the superintendent and the chair didn't share with all the members of the board, or at least if any. Okay, but no problem sharing my emails as an advocate for children. Coincidence again? I don't know. I've already talked to you. I won't go long. You turn my mic back on.
Mr. Phillips, your time has elapsed.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I demand that you hear me speak. I'll demand Roger Lloyd.
Mr. Phillips, your time has expired.
No, sir. I asked you to talk to the tribe about
Mr. Phillips, your time
is up.
expired.
y'all are absolutely the worst thing we've ever had because you won't get the guts to stand there. That's embarrassing. You made that was just embarrassing. I think you might have looked at the bus stop and go through under that leadership as what kind of has to go. All right, so now I want to give you the context of what really went on. I had 3 separate attorneys from the school district take me outside into the hall and talk to me about my situation. I've got them. They know I've got them. They know that they have violated. They put. Not only have they put this child's family in danger, they've endangered my family. So I have reason to be upset. And whether the attorney wants to act like it was a misunderstanding or whatever, I said, if you'll let me finish my statement, and I told her it might run 30 seconds, but I said, let me finish. And she said, I'll let you speak. That's the way she played it off. And she was all, and we can talk after the meeting. Look, after that meeting, that's why I was so fired up, because that's not what we'd agreed upon. And just like that teacher before me, they don't listen. They don't listen to no damn body, and it pisses me off that these poor people, we're not getting paid to go up there and talk to these idiots, and we're paying them to listen to us, but they don't. And Ford, I'm going to tell you, I was so mad when she shut me down, because what had happened, and I'm going to tell this so everybody knows, the parent that I was talking about had, I had helped with the bullying situation, and yes, it was on the bus. And so this was a while back. And so then she goes and calls, not upset. She just wondered because, she's making sure if the route had changed, if they're having issues in the transportation department. It's very apparent. Even the SPALC president spoke up last night against the transportation department. And it was everybody in that crowd knew there was a problem, but they didn't want to hear it. Now, the problem is the parent was connected to me through a totally different child at a totally different school on a totally different incident. Now, that's not coincidence. That family had a name, my name, attached to them in case they complained. Now, you tell me that the board don't need an outside investigation. You can kiss my Indian butt.
Well, let me say this. There's clearly a culture of intimidation, and also the fact that you've got not only outspoken individuals, but you've got teachers and parents who are afraid to come forward and voice their opinions. I mean, this is essentially a fiefdom that the school board's running. And if you're paying your taxes and they're not listening, that's really, really bad. And then you throw on that culture of fear of the people are going to be targeted for speaking up. The teachers are going to be fired. That is not a productive culture to foster learning for the children of Lee County.
Well, they lost one supervisor, and that was what I was talking about when I mentioned the certified letters, because we had called them, my whistleblowers, bless their heart, because they make my life good. But I mean, that board makes my life easier to come after them. They had, during FEMA, the drivers or the transportation department had to work until 3:30 every day. Well, one of the supervisors was getting paid to be at the transportation depot working on buses from till 3:30 every day, 5 days a week. However, he was also working for Pepsi Cola, and he was on that job by 1:30 every day, 5 days a week. You can't have it both ways. Now, this is a theft of our money, and they did terminate, or not. I don't know whether they terminated, he quit, but I know that supposedly his last day was supposed to be the 23rd. And that's not just that. The reason the SPALC president come out is because these drivers are being threatened that they're going to not be paying them on days when they ain't as many, a lot of absentees and stuff. What they're doing is illegal. And the fact that we can't get an outside investigator to come into Lee County, I don't know why that everybody in the state of Florida ain't up in arms over the Lee County School District, because they are absolutely horrible.
Well, I think your point's absolutely right. We've discussed this many times before. The accountability and taxpayers making sure their money's being used wisely and efficiently and effectively. I think that should concern everyone. But you have to think, Joe, if this is going on in Lee County, how many other counties is this going on in? There's 67 other counties, and something makes me think that the Lee County folks didn't just get this idea on their own.
Well, and I'm going to tell you one thing, and when you've seen that, you've seen those resource officers and stuff surround me, I was showed more respect by those resource officers than anybody that school board's ever showed me. And, you know, Chief Newland, he's the guy that's in the white shirt runs them. He used to be chief of police in Cape Coral, Florida. And, you know, I used to coach football with Roger Butler, who'd been the chief of police in Cape Coral, Florida. We'd coached Pop Warner football together. And so, I mean, they know I'm a solid guy. And so he told me, he said, Joe, he said, go out and just take a break. And I said, well, all right. And so I went out to the van, and I took a couple drinks of drink stuff. So I come to go back in. Well, when I go to the door, this little rent-a-cop is what he was. A little Hispanic rent-a-cop from Diamond Security. He said, you ain't coming back here, buddy. I said, what do you mean? You refused me entry back into the school district? You lost your opportunity. I said, you're going to tell me I'm not allowed back into a facility I pay tax on. He said, that's what I'm telling you there, buddy. Just as smart ass as he could be. And I was about to melt down. And Chief Newland said, hey, you need to go back in there. He shut him up. Chief Newland said, Joe, you know I ain't going to keep you out of here. He said, you want to go in? He said, just promise me you won't upset the meeting. Give me your word. And I said, my word's the only thing that's good around here. And he said, I know that. And he said, I got your word. He said, I'm good with it. And so I would have left, but I went and stayed the rest of the meeting, because every time that Jada or Armour tried to fake cry over the loss of somebody else and not stand up for our children here, I would just put my arms up there and stare at them. They know they're wrong. This board needs to, something's got to happen. You've got 2 board members that are totally ineffective. They're canceled out. And the rest of them, at least 3 of them are Millerites, and the ones, the worst of all, there's so much corruption surrounding Chris Patrica, and it just seems to always flow away. But look at the donors, and I guarantee you'll find some of them same developers and stuff that I was telling you about, and that's what worries me about this new bill that Ron DeSantis, maybe if there was a little more regulation on the school district and what they're doing with our money, maybe I'd be a little less leery of that bill, but not right now. I'm super fired up. I mean, they just poured kerosene on me last night.
And I understand. You know what? You're absolutely right. I tip my hat to you for continually trying to hold the school board accountable, particularly when others, as the teacher before you pointed out, are scared to speak up. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just the school board, it's that there's a system and a machine to keep people quiet. And that's what's truly unfortunate, because people have lost track here, at least the people in power, of what the mission is. And that is to deliver a safe, effective, on-time education for the children of Lee County. And there seems to be a lot of intimidation and corruption afoot.
Yep. Well, I'm going to move along from that because that's going to get my heart palpitating. We still got a lot of widespread drama throughout our RECs. There's cliques forming with opposing viewpoints. When are we ever going to see peace in the valley again, Ford?
I don't know. I'll be honest. This has been going on for quite some time. Easily for the last decade between Lee and Collier and the RECs. And people need to realize that we have a presidential election coming up in 2024. I understand there's always little power plays and people are going to have differences of opinion. But I'm going to tell you, by the time we have a 2024 presidential nominee on the Republican side, this crap has to stop, because it's going to be an all hands on deck moment.
Well, I just think that they got to work it out. They've got to be able to get along with each other, because they're doing more to destroy the conservatives than the liberals ever have right now.
I completely agree with you, particularly in our state of Florida, where the Democrats literally look like Charlie Brown trying to kick a football.
Yeah.
And yet we somehow are kind of doing it better, and we're not doing it better because we're working together. We're just doing it better because the Democrats suck.
Yeah.
Now, that really is a problem right there.
Well, now the Lake County GOP become the 3rd Republican county to adopt the ban the jab resolution. And if y'all haven't watched, Ford and I, we spoke with Dr. Joe Sansone, who proposed this resolution on our local show, Season 2, Episode 7. I encourage you to take a look at it if you've not. What this does is this weaponizes the jab. It makes it a chemical and a biological weapon. And it's like as Joe Sansone them say, it's a domino effect. People are reading his resolution and it's pretty much flawless.
Yeah, look, there are some good things to come out in terms of resolutions, including paper ballots, I might add. But at the same time, though, the overall work of the RECs, let's remember the RECs are the Florida Republican Party arm in each of the counties of Southwest Florida, particularly when it comes to Collier and Lee. And people need to understand that the goal here is to make sure Republicans get elected. Yes, it is to find things that we agree on and to push them up to Tallahassee to make sure that the Republican Party understands, the state Republican Party, where the individual RECs are at. But we have to remember what the goal is, and that is to continue to have good conservative leadership in Florida.
Well, I'm going to wrap this show up by saying that the Collier County REC Chair of Hopeful, John Mayo, has been invited to join me for an independent interview. I will honestly admit that I know little about this man, and I'm looking forward to hearing his thoughts and let you, the people, decide. And the last thing I want to say, and y'all bear with me because it's tough. There's I want to put a GoFundMe on here for a kid named Hunter Cox, and He was a classmate of my daughter's, and so just y'all look at that, please. Love, peace, and categories. We'll see you soon, Florida. Yeah.